we kind of had decided to have a MauiFest, and I didn't have a speaker. So I was rushing around trying to figure out who I was going to have, and I found a couple great speakers. And it took me a long time to track them down because I was using the internet, and I would call their home group, and then someone would call me back, and then they'd take my number, and then so it took a while, and then I finally got a lady by the name of Larcene. And she said, oh, yeah, she'd love to speak, but she's going to be speaking at the Big Bash. and so I couldn't use her. So I was really getting discouraged. And I'd found a lady by the name of Carol Thornton. And I thought, she'd be a great speaker. So I called her, and she answered. I mean, it was like a miracle. I called the number, she answered. And I thought, oh, this is divine order. I said, so would you like to speak at MauiFest? And she said, well, I would love to. And I'm thinking, bingo. And she says, but, I have spoken there before. I said, you're kidding. No, I have. I said, okay, all right. She said, but let me help you. I said, okay. She said, I have a gal that you're going to love. Let me see if she'd be interested. I said, okay. And she got right on it. And she called her, and she said, yeah, she'd like to. So then I called, and it was Pat. And I said, well, I don't know if you'd be interested. And she said, well, yeah. And she said, well, we just put some carpet in. And I don't have a CD. I got to find it. I got to go out to the garage and dig it up. I said, okay. I'm thinking, well, how long is this going to take, I wonder? And she got it right to me. And I listened to the CD, and I loved it. And so I called back, and I couldn't get her. I kept trying to track her down. I couldn't track her down. Well, meanwhile, Carol calls me and says, well, did you call Pat? I said, well, I'm trying. She won't call me back. And she says, well, let me try. So she tries, and she says, yeah, she'll call you. And I said, well, I'm glad. And then Pat called me, and she's like, well, I'm so sorry, sometimes my husband, and well, come to find out, I had transposed her number. I'd been calling somebody else. I don't know who I was calling. And so anyway, we did have that one conversation, and since then I keep calling her. Oh, her husband answers. She's in Tahiti. Okay. And I call back because I wait. I call back. Oh, she's in Florida. Okay, well. Anyway, here she is, Pat P. from Gilbert, Arizona. Please give her a warm welcome. I'm going to take this out of your way.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Pat. I'm from Tempe, Arizona, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. And I'm so happy to be here. This is a marvelous experience, and I want to thank Tina and the committee, anybody that had anything to do with me being here. It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I live in a place where we have a lot of sand, but we got a lot of beach, but like no water. But this is wonderful. And the vegetation, in Arizona, our vegetation is cactus. And I'm not saying I don't love it, but it's different. And this is just beautiful. And I have a wonderful room that overlooks the ocean. And I get to see it every morning and every night. And that's wonderful. I will go back to the beach or to the sand. Anyway, I really have enjoyed being here. And everybody has been so kind and so nice. And I have to tell you, when I told Tina I'd love to speak, it seems like such a good idea. And then when I get up here, it's like, gee, I hope you guys don't think I know something you don't know. Because if you've been going to meetings, you know everything I know. That's where I learned what I learned. Anyway, I have a home group. I have a sponsor. And she has a sponsor. And I sponsor people. So that's a little bit of history there. And I need to tell you, because I'm getting kind of proud of this. I've been married for 58 years. So, Al-Anon works, if for no other reason. I just want to tell you that so you know Al-Anon works. I was married to a man for 20 years that practiced his disease, and I was crazier than he was, absolutely, before I got here. I had never heard of Al-Anon until he had been in the program about 3 weeks, and his sponsor came home with him one night, and he said to me, "Are you going to Al-Anon?" And I said, "Why should I go to Al-Anon? He's not drinking now." And he said to me, "How long have you been married to this man?" And I said, "Well, almost 20 years. And he said, "You don't think there's something wrong with you?" I was offended. He is in my living room talking to me like that. The nerve. But you know, I thought about it, and I had friends that did not stick around for 20 years to see if it was going to get better. And I don't know what that is, but I stayed because I knew I was going to say the right thing or do the right thing, and he was going to change. Now, I will tell you, if you have a partner that you marry because you think you're going to change him, don't do it. It just doesn't work. And that was, you know, I knew he had problems when I married him. I met him in the 7th grade, and he was drinking in the 7th grade. I knew, well, we didn't get married in the 7th grade. We might as well have. But anyway, I knew he had problems in the 7th grade. But I knew I could fix him. And I knew this because I had spent years trying to fix my dad, who also drank. My dad and mother both drank. And I always knew why my dad drank. It was my mom. She was not nice to him. She didn't say nice things to him. She didn't treat him nice. And I knew if she would just shape up and be nice, that he wouldn't drink. And then I also thought that if I was really good and I didn't cause any trouble, he wouldn't drink. Well, none of those things worked. But I never stopped trying. So I'm used to people that drink. I honestly thought everybody drank. And if you asked me at that time, I would tell you I lived in a normal family. I think what you get used to, that's normal for you. And I was used to that. We went to my grandma's every Sunday to eat dinner. That's normal. We went to Sunday school. We did all the things that other people did. It's just that alcohol was involved in everything. And I have a sister. I have 2 sisters, but I have one sister that I'm very close to. And when Tammy was talking last night, I thought, wow. My sister and I are the same age for 2 weeks. They told us we were Irish twins. But my mother was only 20 when I was born, and she was 21 when my sister was born. She had no idea what to do with us, not a clue. So what she did, which I now realize was very smart, she couldn't take care of us. She didn't know what to do with us. So she had my dad's sister move in with us, and she took care of us. She cooked our meals. She did our washing. She took us to school. She picked us up when it was raining and snowing. She took care of us. And I really look at that now like my mother knew she couldn't do those things, so she found somebody that could. You might say I had a resentment about that, but I never felt like my mother loved me, ever. But my dad was there 100% all of the time. Even though he drank, he was the nurturing person in our family. He's the one that made sure we had piano lessons and dance lessons and whatever thing else that he thought would help us. And he always had time to listen to me. I would tell him my problems from school, and he would say, "Well, what do you think you should do about that?" And then he would just kind of walk me through the problem. So he was my hero. I thought he was just the best. I couldn't ever see that he did anything wrong. I defended his drinking to the very nth. He was a very generous person. He had the kind of personality, everybody just loved him. Now, we lived in a different era. When I was growing up, we lived in a dry state. And alcohol was not available at every store, every drugstore, every place you went. You had to have a bootlegger. So it kind of put the damper on the drinking, because if you didn't have the money to buy a lot of alcohol when you went to the bootlegger, then you had to go often. And if you couldn't go often, you just didn't have the stuff. You always found a way, of course, but it was different than it is now. And I always thought that he was gonna quit drinking. His mother just would have been in heaven if he would have quit drinking. But he never drank around his mother. He just drank around us. But I never saw my dad as having a problem. Denial's a wonderful thing. And my mother had a couple of solutions that she used in those cases. And this was, if we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. So there's a lot of things that happened that I never knew happened because we had secrets. We had secrets in our house. And the other thing that she did was tell it the way you want it to be. Tell it that way often enough, and you come to believe it's that way. So that's what I learned very early on. My dad read a Saturday Evening Post article in the 40s that was written by Jack Alexander. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was about alcoholism, and he decided that maybe he was an alcoholic, and he went to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, we lived in a very small town, and there were 5 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. So they did not have a meeting every week. They had coffee together every morning, but they only had 1 meeting a week. And my mother was crazed because she said they were never going to have any friends if he kept going to Alcoholics Anonymous. That if he would just, what he had to do was just drink enough that they could have a good time and then not drink anymore. And he just never got the hang of that. So, needless to say, he really didn't last very long in the program. And he was sort of, you know how they say Alcoholics Anonymous ruins your drinking. But it also says that you go back where you were when you first tried to stop drinking. And in a very short time, he was killed in an automobile accident. And he was drunk, driving 100 miles an hour. So I say that he died as a result of alcoholism. I'm going to try to do this without crying. It's been a long time. Should be over. Anyway, my family says he was killed in an automobile accident, and he was. But there was alcohol involved. And I was devastated, just devastated. But by this time, I had married the 7th grader. It really was. They say when you stop drinking, you stop growing spiritually. But I'm going to change all that. I don't know how powerful I am. Anyway, I had married the 7th grader, and we decided, I think it was 4 months after my dad was killed, we put everything we had, which wasn't much, in a car and moved to San Diego, California, from a town of 500 in Kansas. This is quite a jolt, but you know what? It was wonderful. We made wonderful friends, and we still have those friends. They're lifelong friends, and we had really good times, but there was always alcohol involved. There was always alcohol involved. They worked real hard during the week, mostly just drank on the weekends, but still, it got worse at the end as alcohol progresses. It got much worse. But he wanted to go to school, so I went to work so that he could go to school full time. But he just couldn't do it without drinking. And I don't know how I had the strength to do it, but I just said, I'm not working if you're going to be drinking and going to school. You either have to go to school, get through school. I don't want to work forever. I have a child at home. And I'm going to have another one here. Anyway, so he quit school and went to work. Now, that was his right to drink. If he worked and he got paid every week, that's his right to drink, he thought. And when he would argue with me, I would argue back. Now I have, after a certain period of time, when I got to Al-Anon finally, when I stopped arguing with him and he just argued with himself, he could see how silly it was. And he said, I always felt that I had the right, as long as you argued with me, I had the right to drink because you were just being unreasonable. I don't get that, but anyway, when I could learn those 3 little words that I was talking about yesterday, wow. Really? Bummer. That was all I was supposed to say. You can't really get in much trouble if you don't say much, if you don't get in there. But when I'm invited to the party, you know, I want to get in there and really go at it. But anyway, we were in San Diego and everything was going fine. We had a wonderful life. But as the drinking progressed, it wasn't so wonderful. And by the time we left San Diego, we were in San Diego 10 years. And by the time we left San Diego, it was a geographic. I didn't know it was a geographic. I'm into this. If you don't talk about it, it didn't happen. And he comes home one day and says, we're going to move. And he went to a job fair and got a job up in Culver City, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. And we moved in the middle of the year. And I know now it was a geographic, but I'm into kids and trying not to look at that. And by the time we got to LA, my solution to the whole problem of his drinking is I just get really, really busy. I joined the PTA. I was a Cub Scout mother. I drove people to the hospital that didn't have transportation. I volunteered for everything because the busier I was, the less I had to look at what was going on in my house. I was very busy. And then I decided to go. I knew this is a problem. And I would say to him, don't you think you're drinking too much? He never did think he was drinking too much. And I would say, do you think you've had enough to drink? He never thought he had enough to drink. But anyway, as this goes on, I'm thinking, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to live like this. So every summer, I would put my kids in the car and take them to Kansas, thinking that I was going to stay there. And I could only stay for about 3 weeks, and then I had to get home to see what was going on, because who knows what's going on. I mean, I was crazy. And as things kept going on, I'm getting crazier and crazier. So I decided to go to school. I went to UCLA and took some classes in early childhood education, got a job as a teacher for your early childhood, and it was wonderful for me. It was a co-op school where we had 8 parents come every day with their children. 8 different parents every day came with their children to see how to manage and what to do with the children. It was a wonderful opportunity because they all told me how wonderful I was and how great everything was. And you know what? That's exactly what I needed, because I didn't feel wonderful and I didn't feel necessary. Everything was just really bad at that time because the drinking had increased. It was just ridiculous. This is the time that he started coming home and running into the garage. He drove up in our driveway, which was on a hill, and forgot to put the car in gear, and it rolled down the thing and drug him down the driveway with him. Doesn't everybody run over themselves when they're drinking? I mean, I was in total denial. Anyway, it got worse. It got worse. He started having convulsions, and we decided it was entertaining. It was very scary. It has to be a long time before you see these things as funny. But it's been a long time now. It's been 38 years, so I can say it's funny. And he would have convulsions and kind of jackknife around on the floor, and it was very entertaining. It was scary at the time. And he would not let me call the paramedics because he was on the Civil Service Commission of the city that we lived in, who made the decisions about the pay for the paramedics, the firemen, and the police. Every week, a policeman would come to our door and knock on the door and leave the agenda for the week. I always wondered if he came and everything's not okay, what's he going to do? But anyway, he did belong to the Civil Service Commission, so he had a little badge. They gave him a little badge to carry in his billfold. So it looked kind of like a police badge. This wasn't necessarily a good thing because he always drank at a bar that was only about a half a mile from our house, because his good thinking was that he could walk home if he was too drunk to drive. But he also could show this little badge to the policeman, and they would make sure he got home. Not a good thing. Not a good thing for me, good thing for him. Anyway, this is not a good situation. You can tell that. So as things go on and progress, and the drinking always progresses, he came home and said to me one day, I'm going to drink up everything we have. He had tried to stop drinking several times, and he had quit drinking forever, probably 3 times. And forever, the first time was like 3 months. And then he would start drinking again. And then we would go through this, and he would promise to stop drinking again, absolutely. And the forever got shorter and shorter and shorter until he finally just gave up on that. But I really believe that he was trying to quit. He just could not quit. So he came home one day, and he said, some people are born to drink. I'm one of them. And I'm going to drink up everything we have. So if you want anything, you need to go see a lawyer and get everything put in your name. Well, we didn't have anything, but I will tell you, I called a legal aid lawyer, and the next morning I went to see him, and I told him the whole story, with lots of tears, of course. And he said to me, we've been married since you were kids. I don't think you want to get a divorce. He said, I think your husband sounds like an alcoholic. Why doesn't he go to AA? And I said, I don't know. I'll ask him. So I went home and I said to him, the lawyer says that maybe you should go to AA, that maybe you're an alcoholic. And he said, oh, well, I've been thinking if I can't stop this time, I might do that. Now, you know what the insanity of this whole thing is? His dad died of an AA meeting of a heart attack. And we never ever once thought of AA. We didn't think he was an alcoholic. We thought he drank too much. But we didn't know what alcoholism was. I think that we're so fortunate today that we know more about alcoholism than they knew in the 70s. We had no idea what alcoholism was. So anyway, he said, well, I've been thinking about it. If I can't stop drinking this time, I'm thinking about it. So time goes on, and he relocates some equipment at work. He always brought his check home, and he always gave me his money, but he didn't tell me he had a Bank of America card that he had charged on out to infinity. So he has a very nice way of putting it, but he actually stole this equipment from work to sell and get some money. And that was his bottom. That was his bottom, because he knew that it was worth more money and that he would be a candidate for prison. So he decided to go to AA until that blew over. And so he did. And I was grateful he was going to AA, but it was like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. But he had gone to AA for 2 weeks, and he was sent out of town on business. And his sponsor advised him not to go, but he went anyway, and he got drunk. But when he came back, it turned out to be a good thing, because when he came back, he was really ready to go and really make a commitment to go to AA. And I was really glad he was gone, but to me, I had always known if he didn't drink, we wouldn't have any problems. Well, he didn't drink, and we had horrific problems. And we had nothing to blame it onto. There was no alcohol involved now, so what are we going to blame this onto? It was just not, it always had been so easy before. But I have told him since, and he said to me, don't tell people that. The first year of his sobriety was the absolute worst year of my life. I know how to deal with alcoholics. I know when to shut up. I know when to talk. I know what to do. I don't know how to deal with people that don't drink when I've dealt with alcoholism all my life. So we had terrible problems. And so I was really grateful. Now I can say I'm so grateful for his sponsor that came home and asked me to go to Al-Anon, because I wouldn't have gone because I didn't even know about it. But anyway, it saved my life. I couldn't have dealt with him because he went to 3 meetings a day. A morning meeting before he went to work, an afternoon meeting, and a meeting at night. Now, tell me things are different. The things are, to me, are exactly the same. He's not drinking, but he's not home. He's not helping with the kids. He's not helping with anything. He's gone. And I wanted somebody that was going to be there and help me, because I've been doing this for a long time by myself. So I did get a sponsor when I went to Al-Anon, and I said to her, I can't live like this. I cannot live like this. And she said to me, is he drinking? And I said, no. And she said, well, I would understand if you wanted to leave, but I would ask you to give him 5 years. It's 5 years? I gave him 20, and he didn't do anything. So she said, the first year is just physical sobriety. She said, he's not even into spiritual sobriety yet. He's just physically sober. So give him some time. So what happened was I went to a lot of meetings, he went to a lot of meetings, and we just kind of lived in the same house. But there's been so much damage in this relationship. We're not very kind to each other. So I go to meetings and he goes to meetings, and things begin to change. Oh, but I forgot to tell you how crazy I was before I got there. I was crazy. You know, we've got children. We're worried about things. I didn't know how I was going to take care of these kids, so I certainly couldn't leave. But I had a rule, and the rule was if we ate dinner together every night, we were normal, because that's what normal people do. They all have dinner together every night. So that was my normal. And he really tried to be there for dinner every night. He tried very hard. Sometimes he came home, sat at the dinner table, got up, went down, laid on the floor in front of the TV and went to sleep. But he was home, and we would step over him the whole night and change the TV set. And we thought that was normal. We all ate dinner together. But then he got so he couldn't come home for dinner. I mean, he didn't make it home for dinner. But he always went to the same bar. So I was just incensed one night that he hadn't came home, so I drove up to the bar to make sure that his car was there. I wouldn't go in and embarrass myself, but I drove up there to make sure his car was there, and it was there. So then I went home and called on the phone, and I asked the bartender if he was there. And they have this little thing, in case you don't know, where they go like, they answer the phone and they point to the guy, and he says, or yes. And he said, no, he's not here. And I said, you better look again. Because I'm coming down there with a gun, and I'm cleaning that place out. We don't even have a gun. But I will tell you, he was home in 5 minutes. And he said to me, don't ever do that again. And it's like, then you don't ever do that again. But anyway, it worked. So we're still into when he first gets in the program. And his sponsor told him that when he was first in the program that you're like a man that's trying to get a baby in a month, having sex with 9 women, trying to get a baby in a month. That's how you're going to meetings. I mean, he's going to lots of meetings. He's really trying to get the program. And it's the first time in his life, I think, that he really began to feel good about himself. But I don't want to offend any alcoholics, because I love alcoholics. Obviously, I marry them, and I would continue to keep marrying them. But his selfish thing said that his sobriety was, and I know sobriety has to be more important than your family, but there has to be some kind of balance where the family is important, because there's been so much damage, and our kids were getting at an age where they were beginning to really resent the fact that their father wasn't there. So that all had to change, but I tried to make up for that. Now, we had one son that went to CODA, and that really helped. That helped him to understand what was going on. Our other son didn't go. We have 3 children. I forgot to say I had 3 children. That's kind of important. So they're all involved in this too. We're all involved in it. And really, this truly is a disease that affects the whole family. It affects the whole family. And the kids were doing good in school. I always tried to make sure that we did all the things that were necessary. I was always there 100%. I don't know if it's because I was so righteous about me being so good, And he said to me one time, well, you don't have to do much to look good because I look so bad, which was the truth. Which is the truth, and I didn't really realize that. I never ever saw my part. I never ever saw my part in that relationship until I got to the program. I never saw that I had a part. But I can tell you, if I hadn't did all the things that I did, he wouldn't have been able to keep drinking as long as he could. I kept everything going so that he could do that. But I did that because I thought if he wasn't stressed, he wouldn't drink. So he's going to the program, and everything's getting wonderful for him. Everybody's calling and saying what a good job he is, and I'm thinking, what? He goes and sets up tables and chairs. He doesn't do that at home. I mean, I'm not real happy about this. I'm glad he's not drinking, but I'm not happy about all the service that he's doing. So I have to get more involved in Al-Anon, and I will tell you that the first thing that my sponsor asked me to do was to go to open AA meetings. She said, for somebody that's lived with alcoholism all their life, you don't know anything about it. So our date night was on Saturday night, and we went to an open AA meeting every Saturday night, and I began to understand about alcoholism. And she also said to me, I was always afraid I always thought I could say the right thing so he wouldn't drink. So now I think that I'm going to say the wrong thing to cause him to drink. And she said to me, you don't have that power. If you could cause him to drink, you could cause him not to drink. So I was able to give that up. And she said, she asked me, one of the ways that I dealt with everything was, well, I'm leaving. I'm leaving and I'm taking the kids. And that was the first thing she asked me to do, was stop threatening to leave. And I'll tell you, when you stop threatening to leave and you know you're going to be there, you're going to try to do something about the problems. But always before, it was like, well, I'm not going to be here, so I don't have to do anything. I'm leaving. So she asked me to please stop threatening to leave, because I never did leave. But we still had arguments. We really didn't know how to communicate, because during all those other years, I was always right because he's drinking. That was my reason. Anyway, she said to me, I want you to do this. I want you to try this little experiment. I want you to take $1 bill and hold it up, and you have him tell you what he sees on his side, and you tell him what you see on your side. And they will be totally different because you have different points of view. And she said, that's what's going on in your family. You have different points of view. You came from a different family that had different values and different morals and different ways of acting than the family he came from. So you're going to react to everything. You're going to see things totally different than the other person sees them. And I would ask you to consider that when you're in these arguments and things. And that helped me so much. Because we just have different points of view. We're not either one wrong. We're both right with what we see, but we just have a different point of view. And that was very helpful in our relationship at the very beginning. So, time marches on. There's no more convulsions. There's no more of these weird things, which is getting to be pretty nice. I'm feeling pretty good about this. But he is asked to speak a lot. And, of course, he's loving it. And he would say to me at the beginning of his sobriety, he would say to me, why don't you go with me? And I would go with him. Well, by this time we had a son in college, and he's coming home for Thanksgiving, and my husband has agreed to speak in the Antelope Valley. And I know that some of you don't know where the Antelope Valley is, but it's kind of grim. It's out of Los Angeles, probably about an hour. And I don't really want to go because our son's coming home. And I said to him, I want you to promise me that you won't ever speak again when our kids are coming home. And he said, well, there's no way I'd make a promise like that. I was livid. I wasn't only going to leave. I was trying to figure out a way that something bad would happen to him. But anyway, so I said to my sponsor, I don't want to go with him every time he speaks. And she said to me, well, you don't have to. So he comes home the next week and he said, I've been invited to go to Fresno and speak. It will really be fun. We will go early. We'll have dinner. It'll be wonderful. And I said, well, I don't really want to go to Fresno. And he said, if it would help somebody else, wouldn't that be a good thing? And I said, oh, yes, but I don't want to go. And then I thought, gee, I must really be an unreasonable person because I don't want to go. So I went to my sponsor and I said, we're having this argument again because he wants me to go to Fresno and I do not want to go. And she said, you don't have to go. It's like, well, I don't have a reason. She said, you don't need a reason. No is a complete answer. And she said, I'm going to help you handle this. And so she did. It was wonderful. She told me exactly what to say. So he came home and he said, don't forget, next weekend we're going to Fresno. And I said, I love you, and we made a promise that I'm going to stop threatening to leave. But if it causes you pain for me not to go to Fresno, I love you enough to help you through the pain, but I'm not going. And he stood there like I had socked him, because I always let him talk me into doing all the things that he wanted me to do, even though I didn't really want to do them. But I want to get along. I mean, I'm a rule follower. I'm fascinated by the people that don't follow them, but I follow the rules. And it worked. He just got somebody else to go with him, and it worked out fine. And he said to me afterwards, it really changed both of our lives, because I got to stop doing all those things that I didn't want to do, that I just did because he wanted me to. And he said to me, I never felt good about myself. When you let me talk you into doing those things I knew you didn't want to do, I never felt good about myself. So it changed. It changed both of us. It was when one person changes, they say the other person has to change what they're doing too. So that was a wonderful thing that happened for me and for him, really. We have a wonderful life now, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But anyway, so my sponsor, we're going along fine. And I told my sponsor one day, I'm not real happy about the relationship I have with my mother. She's getting older, and now I'm really starting to think about, we're Al-Anons, it's okay if we cry, right? I'm really not happy with the relationship I have with my mother. I'm still blaming her for my dad's drinking. I'm blaming her for a lot of things, which is really ridiculous. I'm the only one that feels it. She doesn't feel it at all. Anyway, I said to her I would like to mend that relationship. After I took a fourth step, my mom was in there big time. Anyway, she said, okay, we can do that. She told me the story. Oh, she told me first, make a list of all the things you want from your mother. Well, that's pretty easy. And when I got through, she said, I want you to give those things to your mother. How can I do that? She said, I want to tell you a story. She said, if there is a well and there's no water in the well, what good does it do you to walk around the well and say, I want water? I want water. Why don't you take water to the well? She said, your mother doesn't have it to give to you. She's not doing it deliberately. She just doesn't have it, which was the truth. But I never looked at it that way before. So she had a little program for me. And the program was that every week I would call her on Sunday. I don't want to say my mother's a controller, but if I didn't call her at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, she wouldn't answer the phone. That was my time, 3 o'clock. Didn't make any difference where I was. I had to call her at 3 o'clock. I was home one time, and her cat was meowing, and I said, I'll feed the cat for you. And she said, no, it's not time. So, anyway, she had a schedule for everything. But anyway, I did. I called her every week. I would call her. I tried to do it at 3 o'clock. Sometimes I missed. But anyway, I sent her cards. I always remembered every holiday. For Christmas, I always tried to do something special, and I would make 25 packages for her to open every day up until her birthday was on the 29th, and we had been taught since we were children that we don't ever get her a Christmas present and say happy birthday too. You had to have two separate presents. But anyway, she had some issues. Anyway, I did that, and I will tell you, I did that for probably, and I always had to say I love you. When I called her, I always had to say I love you. And she didn't say I love you back for a long time. She would say, okay, or that's good. And finally, she was able to say, I love you too. And what I got, when she got sick, my sister would call me and I would go home. And I was sitting in a chair one time just watching her. And what happened was I just had this overwhelming compassion for her. I could see her totally different. She was scared to death. She had no idea what to do about her life. Not a clue. And I just had, it's what we call about changing our attitude. And I would have never been able to do that if I hadn't done the work. And it wasn't, I look back on it now and it's the best thing. It's just one of the best things. But we were so current. And she got very ill. And when she got ill, she called me to come home and help her get her affairs in order, which caused a lot of problems with my sisters because they were there all the time. They're the ones that took care of her. They're the ones that run errands for her and did those things. And she called me to come home and help her. There were a lot of hard feelings. But we got through those because I have a program and I was just willing to overlook some of those feelings. Sometimes we have to forgive people. There's no other way. There is just no other way. Anyway, we did that. And what happened was I took time off. I canceled everything I was going to do, and I went home. And the doctor told us she was going to have an 8-hour surgery, that she had cancer in her carotid vein. And we got there, and the doctor came out in 2 hours, and we said, we thought you said an 8-hour surgery. And he said, I don't know what happened, but they did a needle biopsy, and they said it was cancer. And when they operated on it, it was a benign tumor. And I said, what am I going to tell people? And he said, you're just going to be grateful. Just tell them it was a mistake, whatever. I mean, we're all crazy, I guess, at that point. But anyway, everything that happened, we were very, very current on everything. And I was so grateful because one of the reasons I wanted to do that work was I don't want to be one of those people that stand at the grave and say, I wished I would have told him I loved him. I wished I would have told him how I felt. It was all taken care of. It was all current. It was a good feeling. And I will tell you, when she passed away about three years ago or so, and we were current. I was there the week before she passed away, and she said, I'm going to come out and see you. And I said, that's wonderful. She was 93 years old. And it was just the best thing I ever did. I can tell you, if you have anybody, this is a wonderful program. I had no idea how I would have ever been able to do that before. So that's one of the most wonderful things that's happened to me in the program. And there's been a lot of things. My husband and I have a good relationship because of the program. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for Al-Anon. I still go to meetings, and I think I consider myself active. I know some people are a lot more active, but I was setting up chairs at the last meeting, and I thought, I think maybe I should give newcomers an opportunity to feel good about themselves and let them set up the chairs. But I made amends to my children. I have 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. And my oldest son, I used to tell people at this meeting, that he's got a wonderful job. He's in Austria this week. He travels all over the world. And I would say, my son has a wonderful job, but he drinks 6 bottles of beer every night, but he goes to work every morning. Now, my husband said a long time ago, he's an alcoholic. And it's like, no, he's not. He only drinks 6 bottles of beer, and he goes to work every day. And he said, I went to work every day. What's the matter with you? Well, he called 18 months ago. He called on the phone and he said, Mom, I'm going to go to rehab. And I said, what for? And he said, I think I'm an alcoholic. But, like I said, it's a wonderful thing. Our second son is an overachiever. He has 4 degrees, and he lives in New Zealand now. He married a girl from New Zealand, and he's in New Zealand now. I have one daughter, and if you would have asked me who was going to be the alcoholic in my family, I would have said her. She's never drank. She went to meeting. She was 8 years old when my husband got sober, and she went to the meeting every Tuesday. They had meetings Tuesdays and Fridays. She went to the meeting every Tuesday night with him, set up the chairs, helped set up the sound system. She knows the 5th chapter by heart. If ever I knew an alcoholic, she would be it. But she has never drank because she is so sure that she's an alcoholic that she won't drink. And when my second son got married, before he got married, they had a big engagement party, and they were passing around alcohol. So I asked her if she'd like to have a drink, and she said, I do not drink alcoholic beverages. And everybody just kind of went. I said to her it would have been all right just to say no thank you. But she wanted everybody to know that she did not drink alcoholic beverages. And she has continued, she will not. When she was in high school and they would have parties, if they drank, she would come home. I'm not saying it's not okay. I'm grateful that I haven't went through that with her, but I'm just saying if ever her dad said to her one day, I hope you never drink, because she sure got the character defects that go with it. Anyway, she's a delight right now. She is a delight. She just moved to Arizona from California, and it's wonderful to have her be that close. She was a black belt Al-Anon. She worked in a recovery program for 13 years, and she'd send them all to Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon. But now she's doing a mental health thing, which is about to get her down. But it's delightful to have her there. She won't always go to meetings with me. She doesn't want to go to a meeting with me. Can you imagine? But anyway, we have a wonderful life. My husband travels a lot. We get to really travel a lot, and I'm really grateful for that. And I really do believe, and I do have a God of my understanding, which I did not have when I came here. I had the God that my mother had, which was really a punishing God. And I do have a God, and I do meditate sometimes, and I do feel that connection with God. And I had shared with Tina over and over this weekend how many times that connection has been so evident. I was on my way to my friend's house the other day, and I had to make a left turn to get there. And this car was coming with his blinker on, which showed that he was going to turn right, and I was making a left turn. And usually I just go. I mean, they're going to turn. But I didn't. Something said, just don't. And I just sat there. And he came right straight through the intersection. He would have got me right broadside. So I try to pay attention now when those little things come. And I think some of that comes from the meditation. I think that that's how I make a connection with God, so that whatever happens to me through the day, I have the strength to get through that. And I really do feel that I have everything I need to take care of the things that happen in my life now. And I never had that before. I didn't have solutions. I really didn't have anything but a lot of yelling, which really doesn't help much. So I try to do in the morning. I read Our Courage to Change, or the ODAT, which helps me get started for the day. I try to do a short meditation, and I always end it with, "There's not a spot where God is not." And I was telling him at the table today, I have a little rock that I got from some conference, I think it was in Texas, and it has God on the rock. So I carry the rock with me all the time. So I do have God with me all the time. And I felt, the difference is, well, there's no way to explain the difference. Those of you that go to Al-Anon and have a program know how well Al-Anon works. But I do have serenity in my life today, and I did not have that before I came. We get to travel really a lot, mostly for AA and Al-Anon. And so we meet lots of people every place. No matter where we go, we meet somebody in the program. And you have instant family. It's just, I don't know what people do without the program. I don't know what I would do. We had to move from California in '85. My husband's job moved to Arizona, and I thought I would surely die if I couldn't live in California. And I will tell you that from that, I can live any place. I can live any place, and it would be all right. And what happened as a result of that is his boss quit his job, and he got his boss's job, which there is no way that could have ever happened. He doubled his retirement. There's no way that could ever happen. And part of the reason that happened is that we did not want to leave California. And his sponsor said to him, you might want to look at this as God's will. It's something that you didn't try to bring about. It has just happened. Why don't you go and see? And and my sponsor said pretty much the same thing. So we went over there with the idea, we're going to stay 5 years, and then we're going back. So we kept our house in California. We went to Arizona. And everything that happened to us was absolutely marvelous. And I'm going to tell you, it could not have happened had we not been willing to go. So that old adage, if you're not there when the ship comes in, you're not going to get it. But anyway, everything that happened to us was wonderful. But then we went back to California after the 5 years. And you know what? All our friends had left. Things had changed. In 5 years, things had changed. But we had to go back because of that law where you have to live in your house the last 5 years so you can get the big deduction, whatever. So we stayed there 5 years. And my husband was offered a job while we were there. He had retired by then. And they wanted a 10-year commitment for him to stay with this job. And he came home and said, I've been offered this job. It's a really good opportunity, but they want a 10-year commitment. And I said, oh, I'm not going to make a 10-year commitment to stay in Los Angeles. And he said, oh, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to Arizona. And he said, well, if we're going to go, we better go now while we can still pack. Because we were getting older. And I know what he means because it was we did go back to Arizona, and it was wonderful. And I said to my friend who stayed in California, who had a marvelous property. They were living on their Social Security. And I said to her, oh, Esther May, you have to move to Arizona. You have to move to Arizona. You'd be able to travel. You can sell your house for a fortune in California. They were still worth a fortune in California. I don't think they are now. But anyway, you have to come to Arizona, and you'll be able to travel. You'll be able to do all these things. And she said, we waited too late. Her husband had had open heart surgery, and he wouldn't leave his doctors. So there is a thing where you can wait too late. So we went at the right time. I would hate to think of moving now. And we've been there 16 years. And it was hard to get used to the AA and Al-Anon meetings. They're different. They don't do them like they do in California. No matter where you go, they're not going to do them the same way they do where you come from. And what you have to do is, you work on that thing, that acceptance thing that Dr. Paul talks about in the back of the big book, which is so true for me. And I have said that so many times. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems. It's the resistance that causes the pain. And it is what it is. And the way I really got that was, it was raining one night, and I said to my husband, I hate the rain. And he said, well, that doesn't do any good because it's going to rain anyway. And you know what? It's the same way with the acceptance thing. It is what it is. And me not accepting it doesn't change anything. It's just saying that that's the way it is right now. It doesn't mean, I used to think that meant it was going to be that way forever. It just means it's that way right now, this minute, and it gives me an opportunity to do something about it. change my attitude, whatever. I think God gives me everything I need to have a good day. And if I have a bad attitude, I'm not going to have a good day. And if I have a good day, it's just not going to work if I have a bad attitude. If I have a bad day with a good attitude, it's still going to work. So, it's all up to me. I love that. I am responsible. I am responsible for what I think. I'm responsible for how I act. I am responsible. And the spirituality part of this program, I think, is wonderful. If we can all have a spiritual way, and I had an opportunity to exercise in that, which was very difficult, because when my mother passed away, my sister and her children went in and took all of the things that were my mother's and never ever asked my other sister and I if we wanted anything. And it was such a hard thing. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but your first reaction is not very spiritual. And you know what? I had to really give that some thought. And my dad had said to me when I was growing up, people fight over money, and it's so ridiculous because the money's gone long before the people are. And the relationships are damaged. And I love my sister. And I really think she thinks she probably did the right thing. And I've had to let that go. But her children took all the photographs, which I thought were rightfully mine, or at least to be divided. And I said to her daughter, I would like to have had the pictures. And she said, well, I'll make you copies. So I should be happy about copies. It was a very difficult thing. I'm telling you, if I didn't have a program, I would have been there fighting just like everybody else, trying to get what I thought was really rightfully mine. Apparently, I think God works in my life. He's worked in my life in many ways. My daughter was very ill. They told us for 4 days that she would die. And that didn't happen. But I think, I have to be able to see that those things, that God is working in my life. I can see it in so many ways. It's happened so many times. I would not know. When I first came in the program, I wasn't even smart enough to know this. But I think what the program's about for me now is finding a God of my understanding, and to find out that I'm learning to be God-reliant instead of self-reliant. And that's what I think. When I first came into the program, I couldn't have gotten that. I sat in these meetings for I don't know how long trying to figure out what this was about. And they would say, focus on yourself. And I would think, well, that's selfish. How selfish is that? When I was growing up, you always took care of other people. That's what you were supposed to do. So focusing on myself was really difficult. And when I would go and try to talk about him, they would say, we don't want to know about him. We want to know about you. I didn't know about me. I had no idea about me. I knew what size shoes he wore. I knew everything about him. Knew what he liked. Didn't know what I liked. Knew what he liked. It's very difficult. Anyway, without the Al-Anon program, I don't know how I would have ever found those things out. I have tried to get my 2 sisters to come to Al-Anon. They really need Al-Anon. They don't think they were affected by alcoholism. And I'm going to tell you, my one sister has been in the psychiatric ward, and they think she's crazy. And she's not crazy. She needs to go to Al-Anon. And her daughter got her psychiatrist, and I said to her, have you ever told the psychiatrist that you were raised in an alcoholic home? Which she never has. But I think it would make such a difference if the psychiatrist knew that she was raised. If they have any idea about alcoholism, I think it would make such a difference if she knew, because I think we are affected by alcoholism. So it's a choice. I've taken them both to meetings. They both know Al-Anon. They both know about Al-Anon, and they have chosen not to go. And that's my only thing that I have to do is they know about it. It's up to them. They can choose what they want to do. So somebody was supposed to tell me when it was almost time. Is it? I am? Oh, 5 minutes? Okay, well, I want to say this in case I run out of time. I hope, it's been wonderful being here, and you guys have all been great just to sit here and listen. I have a poem. I heard this at one of the first AA meetings I ever went to, and the meeting was not over until the secretary said this. If all God's thoughts were his children, and I'm sure it must be true, what lovely thoughts he must have had when he thought of each one of you. That's it. Thank you all.